you had put money in real estate, my company was established in 2012. If you had put the money in 2012 into real estate, most likely you would have made money by now, right? At least 2 to 3x with leverage, or if you are a little bit more aggressive in terms of leverage, you can make like 3 to 6x or 6 to 10x.
But you're going to be a 10x company, right?
we'll see about that.
Or
right?
20x or 30x for that matter.
But on a risk-adjusted basis, if you see these two charts, it's very clear, right? Whereas basically, if you do on a deal-by-deal basis, you invest in VC. On a deal-by-deal basis, you invest in real estate. You make more money investing in real estate. Pak Daniel?
Well, I think if I look at it this way, that if you bring it back to the DNI, the fact that we need the first generation of startups that actually have exited or has gotten foreign investment, for them to actually build the second layer or the second round of new entrepreneurs coming up. We just have to get the William Tanujayas and all these guys up there, and so that everybody sees that there is potential. I think that's what needs to be established. So I think moving forward, I'm thinking positively. The stories that have been launched last 2-3 weeks are very, very, very good. The trickle-down effect of people then looking, there is possibility, there is structure that can be done. It still can happen right now in different ways, but this will actually hopefully share the potential to the local investors. That's what I'm saying. And just comparing to just whatever the chart that you're showing right now. So there is huge potential in actually going to the tech startups.
Right. Mahendra, what do you feel like? How do we get the regulations there? I mean, and yes, foreign investors can still invest in internet industries in Indonesia, but how can we get more local investors to invest in the Indonesian internet space when the deal metrics are like this?
Well, I think this chart is not unique to Indonesia. I think everywhere else in the world, the conventional sector investors always view this from the same perspective, and venture capital by nature is more risky. Right. So I think there's nothing unique about this in Indonesia compared to anywhere else in the world. But what is missing is what you share with us, a story regarding your family. So what we need actually is to have the second generation of successful businessmen or investors to take more command and decision in going forward. And I think in that, again, is also how we can communicate and bridge the gap with the older generation, and not only in the family business, but also in the institutional setup. All venture capital business in the internet, by definition, is non-bankable, because there is no guarantee, there is no collateral. So that's another mindset we have to deal with. And then again, with the understanding about what is in for the direct benefit of the real sector coming out of the, let's say, e-commerce. Would that improve Indonesian exports? Would that improve the understanding of Indonesian quality of products to foreign potential buyers? Would that expose us to more globalization? What is that? So I think we really need to go much further than looking at the segmented issue as if, okay, this is domestic investor, this is international investor, and this is the negative list. I think that is oversimplistic approach in understanding the situation.
Right. I'm going to add to that point with on Park Henry's point, Park's point, which is that if you look at what is being built for the companies that are in the 5x, 10x sector, these could potentially be the largest companies of the future. Right? So you're building a very different economy fundamentally, and that can't be compared to building another building in real estate. So the question to ask, the traditional businesses is, can you afford not to participate, right, in this potentially future-defining kind of activities?
But the answer to that is, who will decide? If the one decide that don't understand the difference of ecosystem and potential between the real sector and the virtual sector, then you are taking a risk. So that's what I'm saying.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think this is really an opportunity for the next generation of business builders to participate in the conversation. Right. This is so. This whole
In the
conversation.
real conversation, not just internet.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is not a conversation about, I think, the internet versus the government regulations. This should be a conversation about how does the internet community engage in the government policy making, right? It shouldn't be seen as an extraneous factor. It should be seen as something that you are in a position to shape and form. I think it's Park Mahendra's point as well, I assume.
I used the explanation earlier in the other room before we came in. Ryu said, well, maybe your organization would have a good excuse. Well, we don't have the capacity, we don't have the money to lobby the government. Well, let me put it this way. If you have put the new president in the office because of your activist actions in the internet, how difficult is it to change just a presidential decree?
You want to say something?
Oh, no. I second that, and that's what's happening right now, and that's what we're pushing forward. So that's why, as I said as well, we're running, now we are forced to run as fast as we can right now because of the opportunities opened up.
And one more point to add, when I look at that graph, Ryu, and when you say that, look, there is no local investors who are willing to play in that space. As a VC, I'm actually quite
You're happy?
because it means that's open ocean for us.
Yeah.
Right.
But if I can say something, on the other hand, just take the recent announcements, let's say about the Toko Bagus story, for instance.
Yeah.
Just a few minutes. Toko Bagus started here in Bali, staged, then went to, I forgot what stage, but basically got invested, and then now it's moved to a name which is called OLX, and an OLX from their group level consolidated. So from a local, it will be consolidated and known as a worldwide brand because it had the help of major VCs. So the fact that there's still so much to be learned in the local market, and you compare this to the 100 million with Tokopedia, Tokopedia will not go international. The name itself will not go international, but the OLX name will go international. So there's different phases. The fact is, again, for the negative investment list, the fact that we need right now help. We need the know-how, we need the experience, we need the network to actually build something which is local and bring it international so that the domestic investors can see, yeah, there is a much bigger virtual market to exit in, not only just Indonesia doang gitu loh. You're investing something only for Indonesia.
But is that good? I mean, please keep this off the record because, the OLX story, for me, was a sad moment in the sense that basically, Toko Bagus was a, local brand, local management team, local decision making. Everything was all local. Yes, the money came from overseas, but it was local in terms of decision making. And now, because it's been integrated OLX and changed the name to OLX, all that decision making power has shifted from Indonesia to Singapore, to South Africa, to everything. So basically, in a sense, is that a good thing? Tokopedia is different. Tokopedia, basically, the decision makers are still Indonesia. The decision makers are Indonesian. The management team are Indonesian. So basically, in the end, even though, yes, there's foreign money, there will be some positive externalities being shifted to the local economies. So basically, it's a very great transition to the last point, is that who should regulation help? Are regulations there to help local investors, or are regulations there to help entrepreneurs, the management team? Because sometimes these two people are the same. Sometimes these two people are different people. But Mahendra, who do you think regulation should help?
My view is that it should help the country. It should not just restrict it or limit it to whether it's local investors or foreign investors. It should understand the bigger picture that benefiting the country. Because as you said, you can contradict between Tokopedia and Toko Bagus. You can say, well, this is better and that is not as good. But on the other hand, have we ever talked about on the Toko Bagus, for instance? Yes, probably you can say what you have just said earlier. That might move the decision making from here to somewhere else in other part of the world. But if a consequence to that, suddenly we have the real sector transactions increase, let's say, for the argument's sake, from, let's say, $100 to $1 million. Yes, on the Toko Bagus perception, you can still hold your argument, although it is also controversial. But on the other hand, From the country's perspective, well, it doesn't really matter because it helps the big economy in a much larger perspective. So what? So that's what have been missing in my point. We don't go that far in the discussion. We always segment it on this, and then you become very much focusing on your vested interests rather than trying to enrich the discussion and then go beyond it.
But Daniel, what do you think? Like, should regulation help local investors, local entrepreneurs, or like Mahendra said, should it basically, help the country overall?
Well, I've always looked at something that's being built in a form of what the product is. If you put the product in front and it actually helps a lot of people, it helps the country, it helps people, the investors, helps the startup. As long as that product basically, any investment enables this product to grow to its maximum potential. So maybe at this moment it might sound okay, it will be helping most of the investors. But in the long run, it helps, in a broader sense, Indonesian people, or a stage, a springboard to something else bigger. And I do believe we need these first generation of tech successors. And these are the ones who actually will pick and choose again who will be the next ones and help them out as well. So we have to go through that, and we have to go through that process very quickly.
Kuo-Yi, as a foreign investor at Monk Hill, you will be investing in Indonesia as a foreigner. Do you think that basically your money or basically your expertise can help the local entrepreneurs or the local investors of local Indonesia?
I like to think so, and I don't think you need to protect the investors. So, competition will take care of it. But I think I want to draw upon my last couple of years of working for the Singapore government in terms of building the ecosystem in Singapore as an example. I think what we learned there was probably one of the best way to grow local entrepreneurs is to subject them to the baptism of fire of competition, because they really come out stronger, better, and through the interaction with a global set of talent, they will become better in the longer run. I think that has actually played out. And if you think about the population size, and we talk a lot about population size of Indonesia, the reality is there are a lot of talents in Indonesia. I think they are just needing the experience to be exposed to all these world-class thinking and experiences and systems, etc., to really get to the next level quite quickly. Is my anticipation. So I would say, look, I even on this slide, I would say these guys should ideally be exposed and learn from it.
I just add a little bit. I think what we need is more failures. The faster you fail, the faster, I think, in line as well. Because if you go to Singapore, you see people looking for money. You say, I failed in doing this, I've done this, but this one is different. We don't have enough failures here in Indonesia. Everyone's starting up all nice and rosy and a lot of seed funding, this and that, but we need more failures and actually be able tougher to actually kick this off.
But then I think just we're gonna shift a little bit. Basically, I totally agree with you in the sense that we do need more failures. We do need more foreign investments to help the local, the smaller companies, the startups in Indonesia. But what about basically, should we stop Google? Should we stop Facebook? Should we stop Twitter? Should we stop these global internet companies that have like years and years of experience from coming into Indonesia to give these local startups or local entrepreneurs that potentially might get funding from overseas a running chance to at least be the leaders in their perspective, in the Indonesian market?
Okay.
This is about regulation, and this is about stopping foreigners from coming into Indonesia. So it's not only about foreign investors. I'm more scared about Google and Facebook.
I think every
PayPal.
every entrepreneur today has different challenges, different from last year, 11 or 2 years ago. And the reality is, for e-commerce, is Facebook your best converting platform for e-commerce? If it is, then use it. Or is Toko Bagus, or is Tokopedia, or others. So basically, if you're looking at something at conversion for e-commerce, then you just look at it practically that way. Or there are other people who think that, how can I provide a platform that can actually replace or be more effective or actually spread to the... E-commerce is very much related to the local environment and how to deliver the last mile, anyway, look at the market. So like Amazon, they look at Indonesia, how do I deliver this package to an address that says, sebelah Masjid Merah, gitu. They can't do that. So the local know-how is still very strong. So I think the challenge is what opportunity to take and what channels to use to benefit your startup. So I think if that takes, again, some help from outside, but these ideas then just need to come up, and funding will. I've been in the music industry most of the time, so I believe if you have a hit, everything else will just follow. It doesn't matter which model you take, you have a hit. It's about focusing on the product. Just create that hit. The industry is 98% pirated today, but you have that Sakitnya di Sini, that song today. It's billions of rupiahs already over 2-3 weeks. So I think the philosophy of just focusing on the hit.
Mahendra, what do you think? I mean, we had lunch and we talked about this, about how can we make the global internet companies that come into Indonesia want to kind of take advantage of the Indonesian consumers, basically create an R&D center or something. So basically, it adds to the Indonesian ecosystem. Do you think basically there should be some rules or regulation in place to kind of restrict their movement into Indonesia?
Well, first of all, I don't think you asked the question whether we should close the border from large companies. Well, I don't know whether you should or you should not, but I guess you cannot, because the people, it's not Google or Facebook that will protest against the government. It's the people, the consumers will protest against the government. And of course, that will not happen in China, because China is not democracy. Well, anyway, on that matter, I think it's very important to understand. It is one thing that we look at the regulation as a number one factor, suggesting that this is the biggest hurdle, or this is the biggest, let's say, facilitation. But I think when we talk about the ecosystem, it goes beyond that. We have to understand, these regulations only implemented in the last few months. But before that, also we didn't see any big foreign investment coming into e-commerce when there was no regulation. So I think we should not overlook the importance of regulation, but we should not either exaggerate it. So this is, again, much more strategic and comprehensive issues, and I think we have to make use all the efforts. The second generation, let's say, successful businessmen, the availability of the startup companies, although it's not yet world best practices, but then the interest based on the large consumers market. I think these are all the bits and pieces all around this equation. I think we need to continue doing this, and not to look at one single issue as the main cause of the whole thing.
I think that was a great summary, Mahendra, talking about basically that we need to kind of look past the regulation, just do our business, and just try to be successful. But Daniel, can we just, given that we're running out of time, I think we're just going to go to ending comments. Daniel, do you have any ending comments on this issue, on how regulation, how the government can help local investors, I mean Indonesia in general? And
I think I can just speak on behalf of the association itself. We are now scrambling to give the proper image, the proper information, the proper potential, and sucking this out from the real data that's coming out from the market. At this stage, we're still struggling to get sales data from our members itself. So we're at that stage. So how do we actually convince anybody who wants to invest, or the government, say how big the market can be? So that's a huge thing. And we are, what we want to do is to be able to paint that realistic figure and work together with the government to actually show what the potential and what the country can use out of opening up the doors. And we're very, very confident that once we have this, which will be the next few weeks, I'm very sure that it will relook at the regulations and be more relaxed, although there might be some ways around it for quick wins, but I'm very, very confident that this will be opened up very soon. So we need all the help that we can get.
Thank you. Kuo-Yi, final comments?
Yeah, I mean, final thoughts. As a fund, as a firm, Monk Seal Ventures are bullish on Indonesia. We are excited about the opportunities here. Regulation or not, I think we are going to find ways of participating in this economy, in this ecosystem. So we're excited. I think that's not going to deter us.
Great. Well, I think that's going to be the end of our panel. Thank you very much, guys, for attending the panel, and hopefully it was informative.
Terima kasih.